My question relates to when you're dealing about the concept of synchronicity and getting out ahead of it and being open and intuitiveness, how does something as mundane as planning fit into that concept?
Right. No, that's an excellent notion. It's part of the duality that I was speaking about when I quoted Jung and about you're doomed to make choices. I think it was Spinoza once said that life is what happens to you while you're making other plans. And I remember Marianne Williamson once saying that God's plan works, yours doesn't. And all you have to do is get in sort of collaboration with God's plan, so that you do your planning and you set your goals and you do the things that are all seem important to you. But the key word is detachment. That's what I talked about in one of the earlier principles. It's always detachment, that you are not attached to the outcome. And remind yourself that if in your attachment to what it is that you think you would like to do doesn't materialize, it doesn't work out, you just you accept it and you move on and remind yourself that God's plan is working. You know. Yes.
Sort of piggybacking onto that, how do you make a decision about things like lawsuits? If you're faced with an issue and a lawsuit is a possibility, how do you decide if it's something you just move beyond or pursue?
You let go. You let go of the outcome. And if you insist on staying in it because there's a question of what you believe to be right versus what somebody else believes to be right, you work very hard at detaching yourself from all of the details and all of the information. In other words, you hire a very competent person who incarnated here to do those kinds of things, a lawyer, whatever. And you tell them that I don't want to hear any information that will weaken me, that will make me unhappy, that will bring me anger, that will bring me fear or whatever. You just keep all of that from me. Your job is to deal with this and to go after what it is that you believe that, you know, to fulfill whatever it is, wishes you have. But you detach yourself from all of that. You go through your days being in a state of peace. And you tell him when he calls you, you only give me information that will strengthen me. I don't want anything that will weaken me. And you can do that. It's really quite simple. Yeah, there always will be some kinds of conflicts that will arise that you won't have agreement with someone else. But that's no cause for being depressed, miserable, unhappy, fearful, anxious, stressful. You just don't have to go there in your life. And I have lots of practice at that in my life. And I get better at it as I remind myself that I don't have to be attached to any of that. And when I have had some disputes that involved legal issues, I have told my attorney just exactly what I'm telling you now. I do not want you to call me with details that are going to be upsetting. Whatever it is, even if it's going to cost me money, write the check and keep me out of it. You go through your life and you don't have to have all of that. Any other thoughts or ideas? Yes?
Based on what you were saying yesterday, does that mean you try to love the person you're suing at the same time?
That's absolutely crucial. Truly it is. It's surrounding them with love. And most of the time, when you're able to do that, when you're able to surround them with love, you can make it go away. You'd be surprised how often, well, you remember the story of Ruth Carrico that I read, while she was, what could be more hateful than that? And she was practicing loving someone that was trying to kill her. And it's the lesson of our greatest spiritual teachers. If we want to call ourselves people who are devotees of the greatest spiritual teachers who ever walked among us, we have to practice what it is that their lives were and what they were teaching us. There's a part of us that wants to be right, that wants to make everybody else wrong, that wants to judge others, that wants to believe that I am superior to others on the basis of how much stuff I have, or how much education I have, or what religion I happen to practice, or where I happen to live, on which side of the boundaries. That part of us is not treasuring our divinity. That is the ego. And while I don't think that it's very possible for most of us to ever completely get rid of this ego, as long as we're incarnated into a human form, I do believe that it is possible for us to tame it and to make it less of a dominant force in our lives by no longer having such an important role placed on being right and making other people wrong.
There comes a time, not on the clock, but in the heart, when the soul whispers, enough. Enough giving yourself away in exchange for validation. Enough handing your peace to the opinions of others. Enough letting your value be dictated by circumstances or your light dimmed by someone else's shadows. And in that quiet, sacred moment, a moment not seen by the world but felt by eternity, you are invited to take back the power you gave away. You were not born to be at the mercy of the world. You were born from something eternal, for something eternal. And though you have forgotten your source 1,000 times in 1,000 forms, your source has never forgotten you. It has always called you home. And home, my friend, is not a place you find outside. It is the holy place within where your power has never left. It only waits for your return. We live most of our lives believing the lie that our worth must be proven, earned, defended. We construct a self from scraps, what others think, what the past taught us, what society rewarded, and then we hand over the keys to that false self to anyone who smiles at us, anyone who criticizes us, anyone who offers approval. And in doing so, we make silent agreements with fear, agreements that say, I'll abandon my truth if it makes you more comfortable. Agreements that say, I'll dim my light so you don't feel insecure. Agreements that say, I need you to choose me so I don't have to choose myself. But here is the truth, unshakable and luminous. You cannot lose your power. You can only forget it. You cannot destroy your light. You can only hide it beneath the rubble of other people's expectations. The power you seek is not in becoming more, it is in remembering that you already are. And when you remember who you are, not as a name, not as a role, not as a story, but as a presence, as the awareness behind the thoughts, as the soul behind the eyes, then no one can take anything from you again. Taking back your power is not about control. It's not about shouting louder or winning the argument. It's not about proving anything to anyone. That's still the ego masquerading as empowerment. No real power is quiet. It is soft and undeniable, like gravity. It does not need to announce itself. It simply is. It cannot be threatened because it does not depend on anything external. True power is rooted in being, not doing. In awareness, not reaction. In presence, not performance. When you reclaim your power, you stop asking for permission to be whole. You stop auditioning for love. You stop begging the past to make sense. You stop outsourcing your peace to things that were never meant to hold it. You stop trying to get from the world what only your own soul can give. And how do you reclaim this power? You begin by noticing where you lost it. Not with judgment, but with gentle curiosity. Where in your life are you still trying to earn approval? Where are you still believing that someone else's opinion of you is more accurate than your own knowing? Where are you still afraid to speak, to leave, to shine, to stand tall because somewhere deep inside you believe you are not enough unless someone tells you so? You cannot change what you do not first acknowledge. And when you look at these places, not with shame, but with the eyes of love, something miraculous begins to happen. You start to remember. You start to see through the illusion. You start to feel the embers of truth flickering in your belly, calling you home. You are not weak because you gave your power away. You are human. You learned what you learned in order to unlearn it. And now, with the grace of your awareness, you are invited to come back to yourself, to pick up the pieces of your power one by one and hold them in your hands like sacred treasures. Because that's what they are. Not weapons, but wisdom. Not armor, but truth. The world will always try to convince you that your power lives outside of you, in status, in money, in relationships, in how many people clap when you speak, but the soul knows better. The soul knows that real power lives in the silent choice to love yourself when no one is watching, in the brave decision to walk away from anything that dishonors your spirit, in the unwavering trust that you don't need to chase what is a lie and you only need to become who you truly are, and what is for you will rise to meet you. You are not here to be anyone's echo. You are not here to fit in. You are here to remember the divine music that plays through you, the music that cannot be silenced, even if you have tried. You are here to stop rehearsing a version of yourself that makes others comfortable and start living as the version of yourself that makes your soul exhale. There is a power in you that no one can touch, not because it is protected by walls, but because it is protected by truth. And truth does not bend to opinion. It does not shrink in fear. It does not vanish when challenged. It stands like a mountain in a storm, like the stars in the void, like love in the face of rejection. Taking back your power is an act of remembering, not resisting. It is the choice to stop leaking energy to people, to stories, to roles that were never meant to carry the weight of your spirit. It is the decision to turn inward, to silence the noise, and listen not to the mind, but to the soul. The soul doesn't shout, it whispers, and it never shames. It reminds you. It reassures you. It gently points the way back, not to a new you, but to the real you. You've looked everywhere else. Now it's time to look within, to sit with yourself, not as a critic, but as a friend. To ask not, what should I do to be enough? But what part of me forgot that I already am? Because when you heal that part, when you embrace that part, when you stop running from the wounded places inside you and instead become a loving witness to them, that is when you reclaim the pieces of power you left behind. The people who hurt you were not stronger than you. The heartbreak did not break you. It broke open what needed to be healed. The rejection was not a verdict. It was a redirection. Every moment you thought you were being diminished, the truth is you were being refined. And now you are rising, not in spite of what happened, but because of it. And this, dear soul, is the miracle of awakening. Nothing that happened to you has the authority to define you. Only your spirit does that. And your spirit is untouched, unbroken, unchanged. Your spirit remembers who you are when you forget. And it is patiently waiting for you to remember with it. To take back the name you were given before the world gave you labels. To take back your peace from the mouth of fear. To take back your voice from the hands of silence. To take back your power, not as something you must fight for, but as something that was always yours. You don't reclaim your power by becoming louder, you reclaim it by becoming quieter. You reclaim it not by grasping, but by releasing. Not by proving yourself, but by remembering yourself. That eternal self that existed before you were taught who to be. That unshakable presence within you that has never left, even when you wandered far from it. It is still there, untouched by the storms of this world, waiting with open arms, not to change you, but to remind you of what was never lost. To take back the power you gave away is to finally stop negotiating with fear. It is to stop looking into the faces of others, hoping they will give you permission to be free. It is to realize, in a flash of sacred clarity, that the door has never been locked, that your chains were made of thoughts, not truth, that your prison was built with beliefs, not bricks. And in that moment of seeing clearly, you don't need to escape, you only need to wake up. You were never meant to carry the weight of everyone else's expectations. You were never meant to perform for approval. You were meant to live in alignment with the truth that pulses through your being like breath, like blood, like stars in motion. You were meant to move as love, not for love. You were meant to express, not to impress. You were meant to be, not to become, what you gave away in the name of survival. Your boundaries, your voice, your joy can be reclaimed not by force, but by forgiveness. Forgiveness of yourself for not knowing then what you know now. Forgiveness of others who, in their own pain, taught you that love must be earned. And forgiveness of the story that said you needed to be anything but exactly who you are to be worthy. There is profound power in simply sitting still and saying, I forgive myself. Not because you were wrong, but because you were trying to belong in a world that profits from your disconnection. You were trying to find peace in places that could never give it to you. And now, with eyes of grace, you see that your attempts were not failures, they were teachers. Each one brought you closer to this moment, this miracle, this remembering. When you reclaim your power, you don't become someone else. You become real. The masks fall, the armor drops, the striving ends. And what is left is not weakness, it is divinity. It is the raw, holy presence of your soul, finally allowed to breathe in the open, finally free to take up space, finally free to speak its truth, not to dominate, but to liberate, not to wound, but to awaken. You see, the world has convinced you that strength looks like control, like stoicism, like independence at all costs. But real strength is soft. Real strength is open. Real strength is the courage to feel deeply and still choose peace. Real strength is letting go of the need to win and choosing instead to be whole. And you do not need to become strong. You only need to stop pretending that you are not. Your power is not in what you can control. It is in how you surrender, in how you stop resisting the truth of who you are, in how you meet yourself in the mirror each morning and speak not words of criticism, but of compassion, in how you choose over and over again to come back to presence, to silence, to stillness, to the sacred ground of being that is always here. The ego says, prove it. The soul says, allow it. The ego says, fight back. The soul says, let go. The ego says, you're not enough yet. The soul whispers, you already are. And the moment you stop chasing your wholeness and start resting in it, the game changes. The moment you stop striving to become and instead begin to remember, that's when you touch true power. You are not here to keep the peace by abandoning yourself. You are not here to play small so others feel big. You are not here to shrink your voice so others can be comfortable in their illusion. You are here to embody light. And light does not apologize for shining. Light does not dim itself to be accepted by shadows. Light does not seek permission. It just is. So let yourself be that light again. Let yourself shine, not for applause, but because it is your nature. Let yourself walk away from roles that ask you to betray your truth. Let yourself say no when your soul contracts. Let yourself choose stillness when the world demands noise. Let yourself come home not to a place, but to a presence, to your own presence. The power you gave away when you silenced your voice is returned the moment you speak your truth, even if it shakes. The power you gave away when you tried to please everyone is reclaimed the moment you choose integrity over approval. The power you gave away when you became a version of yourself for others is brought back the moment you decide to become no one but yourself. And the self you are returning to, that radiant, infinite, grounded self, does not need fixing. It needs remembering. It needs permission. It needs space to expand. And the moment you offer it that space, the false identities begin to fall away. The persona crumbles. The roles dissolve. And you are left, not empty, but full of presence, full of light, full of the divine essence that was always there beneath the performance. You don't need to take your power back from others because they never truly held it. They only held the illusion of it. The real work is taking it back from the thoughts that told you were less than divine. Taking it back from the patterns that were rooted in fear. Taking it back from the unconscious agreements that said, if I just do more, give more, sacrifice more, maybe then I'll be enough. But beloved, you are enough. Not because of what you do, but because of what you are. A soul, infinite and holy, having a temporary human experience, a breath of the divine wrapped in skin, a being of pure presence, made not by the world, but by the infinite source behind it. To take back the power you gave away is not to shout it from rooftops. It is to live it silently in every breath. It is to honor your energy like it is sacred, because it is. It is to stop proving, performing, and pleasing, and start being. It is to know, not think, not believe, but know that you are whole, even when the world says you are not. And in that knowing, you find peace. In that peace, you find clarity. In that clarity, you find courage. And with that courage, you begin to walk differently, not with arrogance, but with alignment. Not with pride, but with presence. Not seeking, but radiating. Because power, true power, does not need to pursue, it attracts. It calls forth, it magnetizes. And when you are in your power, you no longer need to hold on so tightly. You no longer grip people, outcomes, identities. You begin to trust that what is for you will remain, and what leaves was never meant to stay. You begin to live open-handed, knowing that the universe does not take, it clears. It does not punish, it purifies. It does not abandon, it redirects. Always, always for your highest unfolding. This is the sacred invitation of your life, to come home to yourself, to release the lies, to drop the masks, to return not to an old version of you, but to the original one, the one untouched by pain, by fear, by distortion, the one who is still here, still whole, still powerful, beyond measure. And so you breathe, and in that breath, you remember. And in that remembering, you reclaim. And in that reclamation, you rise. And when you rise, you do so not to tower above others, but to finally stand with yourself. You rise not as an act of defiance, but of devotion to the truth within you that no longer wishes to sleep. You rise not because you are finished healing, but because you are finished pretending you are not already whole. You rise because something ancient and holy within you refuses to stay hidden any longer. This rising is not loud. It does not need an audience. It does not wait for applause. It is the sacred act of returning to what you never truly lost, the still center, the calm awareness, the eternal now. And in that now, you see clearly. You were never broken, only buried beneath the noise, beneath the shame, beneath the performance, beneath the stories that said you were too much or not enough or somehow wrong for simply being you. But those stories were never yours. You inherited them. You absorbed them. You carried them for years like heavy stones in your spirit, thinking they were truth. But now you see they were only echoes of someone else's pain. And you do not have to carry what does not belong to you. When you take back the power you gave away, you no longer measure your worth by how much you produce or how perfectly you perform. You begin to rest in the miracle of simply being. You begin to look in the mirror and meet your own gaze without apology. You begin to speak not to be heard, but because your voice is sacred. You begin to choose what feels like peace. instead of what looks like approval. And what a beautiful power that is. To no longer need to explain your soul. To no longer shrink to fit into spaces that dishonor your expansion. To no longer negotiate your boundaries just to be accepted by people who have yet to accept themselves. This is not rebellion. This is return. This is not ego. This is essence. This is the sacred remembrance that your spirit came into this world with a mission not to impress, not to conform, not to survive, but to awaken, to love, to embody the divine. And when you remember that, the illusion of power that the world sold you begins to dissolve. Because real power is not in dominance, it is in presence. It is not in knowing all the answers, it is in trusting the silence. It is not in never falling, it is in rising every time, softer, wiser, and more open than before. You are not here to be powerful in the way the world defines it. You are here to be powerful in the way the soul remembers it, as love, as peace, as the quiet strength that flows like water through every crack in the illusion. You are here to be power, not as force, but as freedom, the kind that liberates others simply by being what it is. And when you live from that place, everything changes. You no longer chase love, you become it. You no longer beg for peace, you embody it. You no longer wait for signs, you are the sign. You no longer look outward for a savior because you become the one you were waiting for. This is not fantasy. This is not motivational fluff. This is the truth that lives beneath all other truths. This is the truth the soul has been whispering through every heartbreak, every loss, every longing. It has always said the same thing again and again. Come back to yourself. Come back home. You are the light. You are the way. So take back the power you gave away by stopping the search for it outside of you. Take it back by no longer asking for permission to be enough. Take it back by resting in the fullness of your being, even when the world tells you to keep striving. Take it back by honoring what you feel, what you know, what you are, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's misunderstood. Because every time you do, the illusion loses its grip. Every time you do, the false self crumbles a little more. Every time you do, the soul gets louder and life gets clearer. And the moment you stop trying to fix yourself and start witnessing yourself with compassion, you begin to understand that healing is not about becoming new, it's about remembering what was always true. The moment you stop running from your wounds and start meeting them with love, they stop being prisons and start becoming portals. The moment you stop performing and start being, the performance ends and the real you steps onto the stage. And the real you does not fear rejection because it no longer depends on acceptance. The real you does not fear failure because it no longer chases success. The real you does not seek to be special, it knows it is sacred. The real you does not need a reason to rest, to breathe, to shine, to love. It simply does because that is its nature. So breathe deeply. And with each breath, let go of what is not yours. Let go of the labels, the roles, the masks, the burdens. Let go of the need to be understood by those who do not understand themselves. Let go of the fear that your truth will be too much or not enough. Let go of the story that says you have to earn your worth. Let go of the belief that says power looks like control. And in that letting go, you return. Not to who you were before the pain, but to who you were beneath it. Not to an older version of yourself, but to the eternal one. The one who never left. The one who knows. You do not need to force this becoming. You need only to allow it. You do not need to fight for your light. You need only to stop hiding it. You do not need to convince the world of your worth. You need only to remember it, live it, embody it, and the world will reflect it back in ways you could never predict. Because life, you see, does not respond to who you pretend to be. It responds to who you truly are. It responds to your frequency, to your vibration, to your alignment. And when you are aligned with the truth of your being, that you are already whole, already worthy, already divine, you stop chasing life and start co-creating with it. This is power. Not the kind that shouts, but the kind that sings. Not the kind that controls, but the kind that flows. Not the kind that dominates, but the kind that liberates. And it has always been yours. There is something profound that happens when you stop waiting to be rescued and realize you were never lost. The power you gave away wasn't taken from you. It was placed in the hands of false beliefs with your silent consent. But now something in you is rising, not in noise, but in knowing. And that knowing is your liberation. That knowing is your homecoming. That knowing is your true power. This is where the journey turns inward once more. Because real change does not come from rearranging your outer world. It comes from surrendering your inner world to truth, to love, to presence. And when you surrender in this way, you don't lose control. You remember you never needed it. Taking back your power means no longer reacting to life from the place of fear, but responding from the presence of love. It means recognizing that every trigger, every disappointment, every unhealed ache is not a punishment, but a doorway leading back to the part of you still waiting to be loved, to be seen, to be heard by you. You take back your power by meeting yourself in the very places where you once abandoned yourself, in the fear you silenced, in the anger you buried, in the grief you rushed past. You return to those parts like a gentle parent, not to fix them, but to sit with them, to be with them, to let them know, I'm here now, and I will not leave you again. Because the real power you seek is not power over others, it is power with yourself. Power that comes from radical self-honesty, from integrity, from no longer betraying your peace just to keep the illusion of connection, from refusing to trade your truth for temporary comfort, from learning to be alone without being lonely because your own presence has become your sanctuary. This is the liberation no one can give you and no one can take away. You may be wondering, but what happens to my life when I change in this way? What happens to the relationships I built while living from the false self? What happens to the roles I played, the expectations I carried, the systems I upheld with my silence? And here is the truth. Some things will fall away. Some people may not understand the new vibration you are anchoring into. Some chapters may close not because you failed, but because you healed. But this is not loss. This is alignment. This is not collapse. It is recalibration. And whatever is not rooted in truth cannot survive your awakening. Let it go. Your job is not to keep things together that were never meant to last. Your job is to stay true to your soul as it returns to its natural rhythm. Your job is to honor the sacred contract you made before you came into this body, to embody the light you are no matter what the world does with it. So you stand taller now, not with pride, but with presence. You walk lighter, not because life is easier, but because your burden is no longer self-abandonment. You speak softer, not because you are uncertain, but because your certainty no longer needs volume. You love deeper, not because you need someone, but because you are love, and love naturally extends itself without demand. And most importantly, you forgive. You forgive yourself for the years you spent pretending, pleasing, and proving. You forgive yourself for not knowing what you didn't know. You forgive yourself for the moments when you gave yourself away just to feel safe, seen, or wanted. Because you now know you no longer need to abandon yourself to be loved. You need only to return to yourself, to love yourself fiercely, unapologetically, unconditionally. When you take back the power you gave away, you realize it was never about becoming powerful in the eyes of others. It was about remembering you were never powerless in the eyes of the divine. You were never a victim of your life, only a student of it. And now, with eyes of wisdom and a heart made soft by the fire, you step into your true identity, not a role, not a label, not a wound, not a performance, but a soul, a light, a sacred being, here for a sacred reason. And that reason is not to strive endlessly, not to prove your worth, not to gather possessions or perfect appearances, but to awaken, to be, to love, to shine. You will still face challenges. The world will still ask you to forget, but now you will remember, and when you forget, you will remember again. That is the path. That is the way. It is not a straight line, but a spiral, always returning deeper each time to the truth that cannot be erased. You are enough. You are whole. You are home. So breathe, dear soul. Let this be your exhale. Let this be the moment you stop chasing and start receiving. Let this be the moment you take your life, your real life, back into your sacred hands. And as you do, may you walk gently but boldly. May you speak clearly but kindly. May you rest deeply, knowing you no longer have to pretend. May you live freely, knowing nothing outside you can add to what already lives within you. This is your return. This is your remembrance. This is your reclaiming. This is your power, and it was never gone. It was always here. And now, you are too. My dear, wonderful friends, tonight I shall share with you the most powerful secret in all of creation. How to speak to yourself in a way that will completely transform your world in just 3 days. Not in 3 months, not in 3 years, but in 3 days. For you see, the power of your inner conversation is absolute, and it is the only true creative power in the universe. Now, when I tell you to talk to yourself, I am not speaking of the idle chatter that most engage in throughout their day. I speak of that inner conversation that is deliberate, conscious, and aligned with your desired state. For your inner conversation is your consciousness externalized, and your consciousness is God. Consider the words of Scripture. In the beginning was the Word. These words are not speaking of some external deity's utterance. They speak of your inner word, your inner conversation. For you are the operant power, and your inner conversation is the word that creates all things. Many of you come to me asking, Wayne, how long must I wait to see my desires manifest? And I tell you now, give yourself 3 days of proper inner conversation, and you will see your world begin to transform. For 3 is the number of completion in Scripture. And when you maintain the proper inner conversation for 3 days, you set in motion forces beyond your current understanding. Let me share with you exactly how to conduct this inner conversation. First, you must understand that your inner conversation must be from the end. You do not speak of what you want to be true. You speak as though what you desire is already true. This is the great secret that most of the world has missed. When you wake in the morning of your first day, your inner conversation must be from the state of your wish fulfilled. If you desire wealth, your inner conversation must be that of a wealthy person. If you desire health, your inner conversation must be that of a healthy person. If you desire love, your inner conversation must be that of someone who is deeply loved. But then this is crucial. Your inner conversation must feel natural. It must not be strained or forced, for feeling is the secret. And your inner conversation must be accompanied by the feeling of naturalness. Let me give you a perfect example from Scripture. When David spoke to Goliath, his inner conversation was not, I hope I can win or I will try my best. His inner conversation was from the state of victory already achieved. This is why he could say with complete conviction, this day will the Lord deliver thee into mine hand. Now for these 3 days, you must guard your inner conversation as though your life depends upon it. Because it does. Every time you catch yourself engaging in inner conversation that contradicts your desired state, you must immediately revise it. This is not a suggestion. This is a command if you wish to see your world transform. Consider this. Every outer conversation, if you have, is first an inner conversation. Every relationship you have is first an inner conversation. Every circumstance in your life is first an inner conversation. Therefore, by changing your inner conversation for just 3 days, you literally change the entire substance from which your world is created. Let me tell you how to structure your inner conversation throughout these 3 days. In the morning, your first inner words must be from the state of your wish fulfilled before you open your eyes, before you move a muscle. Engage in the inner conversation of the person you wish to be. If you desire wealth, your inner conversation might be, I am so grateful for my abundant life. Money flows to me easily and continuously. I am surrounded by prosperity. But remember, these words must not be mere affirmations. They must be spoken with the feeling of knowing that they are already true. Throughout your day, your inner conversation must maintain the same level of conviction. When challenges arise, and they will arise, your inner conversation must remain steadfast. If someone speaks of lack, your inner conversation must be of abundance. If someone speaks of illness, your inner conversation must be of health. This is where most fail in their attempt to change their world. They allow their inner conversation to be pulled into the current circumstances rather than maintaining the conversation of their desired state. But I tell you now, circumstances have no power over your inner conversation unless you give them that power. For these 3 days, you must be relentless in maintaining your new inner conversation. When you walk down the street, your inner conversation must be from your desired state. When you eat your meals, your inner conversation must be from your desired state. When you prepare for sleep, your inner conversation must be from your desired state. Let me share with you a principle that I have tested and proven countless times. Your inner conversation is the only reality. Everything else, absolutely everything, is a shadow of your inner conversation pushed out. Therefore, when you maintain the proper inner conversation for 3 days, you literally create a new world. Many of you may be thinking, but Wayne, 3 days seems too short a time to change my entire world. Let me remind you of the story of Jonah. How long was he in the belly of the whale? 3 days. And after 3 days, he was transformed, and his world was transformed. This is not coincidence, my dear friends. This is law. 3 days of proper inner conversation is all that is required to set in motion the forces that will transform your world. But these must be 3 complete days, not 3 days of wavering between states. During these 3 days, you must guard your inner conversation, not just in your waking hours, but as you fall asleep. For the last inner conversation you have before sleep is particularly powerful. It continues to echo through your subconscious mind throughout your sleep. Therefore, as you prepare for sleep during these 3 days, your inner conversation must be perfectly aligned with your desired state. If you desire a successful business, your inner conversation might be, I am so grateful for my thriving business. My customers are delighted with our services. Profits increase continuously. But remember, and this is crucial, your inner conversation must be accompanied by the feeling of naturalness. It must feel as natural to have this conversation as it feels to speak of what you had for breakfast. This is where the power lies, not in the words themselves, but in the feeling of naturalness that accompanies them. Let me share with you another principle. Your inner conversation creates your outer conversations. Therefore, during these 3 days, you must be particularly vigilant about your outer conversations as well. They must align with your new inner conversation. If someone asks you how you are, your response must come from your desired state. If someone speaks to you about problems or difficulties, your response must come from your desired state. Your outer conversation must be a perfect reflection of your new inner conversation. Many of you may find this challenging at first. You may be tempted to engage in conversations about current circumstances rather than your desired state. But I tell you now, this is where your power lies in maintaining your new conversation, regardless of appearances. Consider the story of Jesus walking on water. What was his inner conversation? Was it about the impossibility of walking on water? Was it about the danger of the storms? No, his inner conversation was from the state of mastery over all natural laws, and his outer world had to conform to this inner conversation. During these 3 days, you must maintain the same level of conviction in your inner conversation. You must speak to yourself as though your desired state is already your reality, not as though it will be, not as though it might be, but as though it is. Let me share with you how to handle doubts when they arise during these 3 days, and they will arise. When a doubt appears in your mind, do not fight it. Instead, immediately revise your inner conversation. If you catch yourself saying inwardly, "This isn't working," immediately revise it too. "Everything is working perfectly. My world is transforming now." This revision must be immediate and complete. You cannot allow doubt to linger in your inner conversation. For remember, your inner conversation is the only reality. Therefore, a doubting inner conversation will create a doubting outer reality. Throughout these 3 days, your inner conversation must be dominated by gratitude. Not gratitude for what you hope will come, but gratitude for what is already yours in your desired state. This gratitude must be part of your inner conversation throughout the day. When you wake in the morning, your inner conversation must be filled with gratitude. When you go about your daily activities, your inner conversation must be filled with gratitude. When you prepare for sleep, your inner conversation must be filled with gratitude. Let me share with you another principle. Your inner conversation creates your inner states, and your inner states create your outer world. Therefore, during these 3 days, your inner conversation must create and maintain the inner state of your wish fulfilled. If you desire wealth, your inner conversation must create and maintain the inner state of wealth. Consciousness. If you desire health, your inner conversation must create and maintain the inner state of health. Consciousness. If you desire love, your inner conversation must create and maintain the inner state of being loved. Many of you may be wondering what to do if you slip in your inner conversation during these 3 days. Let me be very clear. You must not condemn yourself. Instead, immediately revise the conversation. Remember, you are training yourself to maintain a new inner conversation. And like any training, it requires practice. During these 3 days, your inner conversation must be your primary focus. Every other activity must be secondary to maintaining your new inner conversation. For you are literally recreating your world through this conversation. Let me share with you how to structure your inner conversation for specific desires. If you desire a new home, your inner conversation might be, "I love living in my beautiful new home. Everything about it is perfect for me." If you desire a promotion, your inner conversation might be, "I am so grateful for my new position. It's everything I desired and more." But remember, these are not mere words. They must be accompanied by the feeling of living in that new home, the feeling of working in that new position. Fulfilling is the secret, and your inner conversation must generate the feeling of your wish fulfilled. Throughout these 3 days, your inner conversation must be specific. Vague inner conversation creates vague results. Therefore, speak to yourself with clarity about your desired state. Be specific in your inner conversation about what you are grateful for, what you are experiencing, what you are enjoying in your desired state. Let me share with you another principle. Your inner conversation creates self-concept, and your self-concept creates your world. Therefore, during these 3 days, your inner conversation must be about who you are, not just what you have. If you desire success, your inner conversation must be about being a successful person, not just about having success. If you desire abundance, your inner conversation must be about being an abundant person, not just about having money. If you desire love, your inner conversation must be about being a loved person, not just about having a relationship. During these 3 days, your inner conversation must be continuous, not in the sense of constant chatter, but in the sense of consistent alignment with your desired state. Every time you become aware of your inner conversation, it must be from your desired state. Let me share with you how to maintain this continuity. Set reminders for yourself throughout the day. Every time you look at your watch, every time you eat a meal, every time you enter a room, let these be triggers to check your inner conversation. But remember, your inner conversation must not be mechanical. It must be aligned with feeling rich with the emotion of your desired state. For it is the feeling that gives power to your inner conversation. Throughout these 3 days, your inner conversation must be sovereign. You must not allow anyone or anything to dictate your inner conversation. Not circumstances, not other people's opinions, not past experiences. Nothing must have power over your inner conversation except you. Let me share with you another principle. Your inner conversation creates your expectations, and your expectations create your experience. Therefore, during these 3 days, your inner conversation must create the highest expectations of good for yourself. Many of you may be thinking, but Wayne, what if my desired state seems impossible? Let me remind you, nothing is impossible. To your inner conversation. Your inner conversation is God in action, and to God, all things are possible. During these 3 days, your inner conversation must be about possibility, not probability. You must speak to yourself from the state of your wish fulfilled, regardless of how probable or improbable may seem to your rational mind. Let me share with you how to handle apparent failures during these 3 days. If something happens that seems to contradict your desired state, your inner conversation must remain unchanged. You must speak to yourself as though the seeming failure is actually part of the perfect unfolding of your desire. Remember, your inner conversation is creating your reality, not the other way around. Therefore, no external circumstance has the power to change your inner conversation unless you give it that power. Throughout these 3 days, your inner conversation must be your constant companion. It must be the lens through which you view every experience, the filter through which you interpret every event, the standard by which you measure every circumstance. Let me share with you another principle. Your inner conversation creates a belief system, and your belief system creates your reality. Therefore, during these 3 days, your inner conversation must consistently reinforce the beliefs that support your desired state. During these 3 days, your inner conversation must be a perfect reflection of the person you wish to be. You must speak to yourself as that person would speak. Think as that person would think. Feel as that person would feel. Let me share with you how to maintain this level of consciousness. When you catch yourself speaking from your old state, immediately ask yourself, how would I be speaking to myself if I were already the person I wish to be? Then revise your inner conversation accordingly. Throughout these 3 days, your inner conversation must be about what is not, what was, or what might be. You must speak to yourself in the present tense from the state of your wish fulfilled. This is crucial for the manifestation of your desire. Let me share with you another principle. Your inner conversation creates future, but it does so by creating your present. Therefore, during these 3 days, your inner conversation must make your desired future your present reality. Many of you may be wondering what will happen after these 3 days. Let me tell you, if you have maintained the proper inner conversation for 3 days, you will have set in motion forces that must result in the manifestation of your desire. During these 3 days, your inner conversation must be your primary tool for creation. Every other method, every other technique, every other approach must be secondary to maintaining your new inner conversation. Let me share with you how to know if your inner conversation is correct. If it feels natural, if it feels real, if it feels true, even in the face of contrary evidence, then your inner conversation is correct. Throughout these 3 days, your inner conversation must be protected like a precious jewel. You must guard it against doubt, against fear, against negativity. For your inner conversation is the very substance from which your world is created. Let me share with you another principle. Your inner conversation creates a relationship with yourself, and your relationship with yourself creates all other relationships. Therefore, during these 3 days, your inner conversation must reflect the highest, most loving relationship with yourself. During these 3 days, your inner conversation must be your sacred practice. You must treat it with the same reverence that a priest treats his prayers, that a scientist treats his experiments, that an artist treats his creations. Let me share with you how to maintain this level of devotion. See your inner conversation as your direct connection to the creative power of the universe. For that is exactly what it is, your consciousness in action creating your world. Throughout these 3 days, your inner conversation must be your constant reminder of who you really are, the operant power in your world, the creator of reality, the God of your uniqueness. And that, my dear friends, is how you must talk to yourself for 3 days if you wish to transform your world. Not sometimes, not occasionally, but consistently, continuously, constantly. For your inner conversation is the Word of God in action, and it cannot return void. Remember this, your world is your inner conversation pushed out. Therefore, guard your inner conversation for these 3 days as though your life depends upon it, because it does. So what will you do with this knowledge? Will you continue with your old inner conversation, creating the same results you've always created? Or will you begin today, this moment, to maintain a new inner conversation that must create a new world? The choice is yours, but the law is absolute. Your inner conversation creates your reality. Therefore, speak to yourself for 3 days as though your desires are already fulfilled, and watch your world transform. That's the message I want to leave you tonight. Not because it's easy, but because it's true. Not because it's simple, but because it's powerful. Not because it's what you expected to hear, but because it's what you needed to hear. Remember, 3 days of proper inner conversation will transform your world every single time. And isn't that worth thinking about?